Okay, so hello, I am the other MC. I'm Abby. So I will be introducing some of the speakers as well. And I get to start by introducing Ian Cowley, who is a technical writer at Salto Systems. He's going to be doing a talk on If You Build It, They Will Come, our journey to a unified and discoverable documentation platform. And I happen to know that Ian's journey has been somewhat entertaining. He's gone from webmaster of a celebrity gossip site to a much more peaceful and relaxing place where he's suddenly only trying to meet the needs of a ton of readers with a ton of different platforms, trying to figure out how to get them all to the right documentation. So take it away, Ian. I'm looking forward to this one.
Thanks. So yeah, I used to write, about the same 3 topics over and over again, articles with completely predictable outcomes that followed very rigid formulas, producing material that, nobody really cared about, or I didn't think they even learned anything about them. But yeah, those were times when I was a celebrity website editor. So, APIs are a lot more interesting than influencers. Hi, my name's Ian, and as Abby said, I'm a technical writer for a company called Salto Systems. We make access control solutions. We also make hardware as well. So that's smart electronic locks and other devices. And today, I'm going to talk about how we built a brand new documentation portal. And a spoiler alert from the start, we ended up actually building 2. But more of that later. So you might be thinking, hey, I came to talk on documentation, right? Well, baseball? And a couple of things here. First off, I know nothing about baseball at all, so please bear with me, those of you who do. And the second thing is, so this shot here is from a film called Field of Dreams. Have a show of hands. Anybody ever heard of this film, seen it? Whoa, okay, not bad, yeah, so a lot of people have. Some people same age as me. This is a film from 1989. And yeah, it's kind of about baseball. And essentially, the film stars Kevin Costner as a farmer who builds a baseball field in a cornfield in Iowa. And this baseball pitch field, again, I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology, attracts the ghosts of baseball legends. So that's kind of where this quote comes from. If you build it, they will come. Although it's actually a misquote. So the film itself uses the phrase, if you build it, he will come. And it's a lot more about Kevin Costner's character's father, who he sort of eventually, well, spoiler alert again, reconciles with at sort of the end of the movie. Sorry for that. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the following points. Essentially we started off from a sort of documentation mess point of view, which we inherited through, lots of different reasons. And today I'm going to talk a lot about information architecture. And a lot of the focus today, as well as being on information architecture, will also be about kind of user personas, and then some of the sort of challenges that we came across as we built this new platform. And a book that I found really useful when we started out in this journey was this How to Make Sense of Any Mess by Abby Covert, which I'm sure a lot of you might have heard of before. It's a really, really highly recommend it if anybody has to do anything to do with information architecture, because hey, we're technical writers, or we're also information architects, and I know there's a lot of different profiles in the room as well today. So the first step to taming any mess is to shine a light on it. And this is what Abby Covert says in the book. The first step is let's acknowledge that there's organizational chaos. And it takes a lot of courage to advocate for change within an organization. It takes courage to say that, hey, what we've been doing before isn't quite right, and let's set the stage for sort of transformation. So sort of to kick things off, we started with looking at kind of the problems that we had. So what was one of the kind of big problems that we had? Well, we had a documentation landscape that was scattered across different tools and different teams. And this kind of came about because the company in recent years that I worked for had acquired a lot of different companies over the years. And with that, lots of different systems and lots of different practices for creating documentation. One of the other challenges that we had was that we had a very geographic, dispersion of the teams that were working on documentation. So that's a challenge in itself, although not so much in these days where we can all connect virtually. But there were also people who were contributing to documentation and had varying different responsibilities across the group. And then, of course, one of the other challenges, as we all know, was that our documentation had lots of different formats. It was in lots of different styles, different levels of quality. And so, essentially we were in kind of this situation. I actually don't know where this reference is from, but kudos to whoever made it. I've used this a lot before to kind of, tell people, this was kind of the problem that we had. When users get lost in content, we're creating a lot of issues, not just for our support teams, but obviously customers themselves, partners, even our internal R&D teams, and of course even marketing and sales teams. When documentation is sort of siloed and inconsistent, it's not personalized, it's not optimized for search, it has no analytics, that's not a good position to be in. So everybody benefits from good docs. This was a similar situation as to what we found ourselves in. We had a lot of people coming to us saying, I have a product from your company, I'm using this software platform, but I don't really know what I'm using. I don't really know where to go to find information about it. And again, this is a commercial challenge as well. It impacts on customer satisfaction, and it's a burden, for our support teams. So this was kind of where we were. This is Kevin Costner. For those of you who don't know what Kevin Costner looks like, back in the 80s, well, early 90s, before he had that kind of nice hairstyle. So this is Kevin Costner in I think this is an early version of that John Travolta meme, where he's kind of searching and looking and thinking. And this is Kevin Costner in a field of corn, kind of thinking about building something. In his case, it's a baseball pitch field. In my case, it was a documentation website. And, he's kind of ideas coming to him. He's hearing voices, if you build it, they will come. And this is kind of where I started off. And I have to say, at this point, I got a lot of support in this project from our internal R&D teams. So big shout out to them, to the engineering teams and the engineering managers of our cloud, our on-premise and mobile solutions. And one of the interesting points when we started out on this project was that we were in parallel building a new cloud platform as well. So that really kind of helped because we could sort of figure out what we were trying to do with this new platform and reflect that as well in the documentation as well. So let's go back to Abby Covert. State your intent. what exactly do we want to do here? I had a vision when I was in that cornfield. I want to build like a one-stop shop for all our documentation requirements. Enough of like people trying to find documentation on different websites, PDFs, Word documents, whatever. It's going to be a website. We knew we wanted to build a website, okay? And we kind of knew we wanted to do docs as code processes and tooling. More on that later. But yeah, what are the benefits of having a website? Well, we wanted to be agile. We wanted to be able to update things in real time. We wanted to reduce that tech support burden. We don't want to be updating PDFs. PDFs obviously get out of date very quickly. We all know that's a bad experience. Also the idea behind building a website with good documentation. It's great for your brand, right? It's good to know that people are all aware of these great examples out there, like Stripe, for example, well known for having great documentation. So this is what we started with. This is a terrible, you can see that design is not my forte. This kind of terrible wireframe I sort of stuck under the noses of lots of different people in the company and said, hey, we've got these different platforms, and why is the documentation for this platform over here, and why is the documentation for this platform just like an HTML embedded into the application itself? And so, ideally, what I was trying to do was, kind of get buy-in around the company. As I say, people around the company were very receptive. There were a lot of people who were kind of aware that, we needed to do something. We got the go-ahead. So this was probably, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago. Back to information architecture. So, who are we building this thing for? I think that's like something that is really useful to reflect on. There's no point in building something if you don't know who it's for, right? Who are our users? In our case, we have quite a complex supply chain. So we don't sell directly to end users, but end users use our products. And there are a lot of kind of different profiles who benefit from documentation around the company as well. This is where we started to look at personas. And we sort of identified a series of different personas who would be equivalent to real users who are actually using our documentation. On the one hand, we have installers. So these are people who are literally coming to an installation like here and mounting a device or a lock on a door and then having to configure it with the software. And then essentially they just hand it off to whoever's managing. That's quite a technical profile, but very worthy of its own kind of set of very defined documentation. On the other hand, we have managers who, again, are these sort of, might be a property manager in a building who is, essentially needs to know how to assign keys to a user or assign access to them, so they can get into the building, and lots of other different things. And that's kind of a profile that there's a little bit of crossover there with, for example, a systems admin file, particularly with our on-premise content where, you have to actually physically install software onto a server. On the other hand, we have like users who are maybe more kind of end users, so maybe residents who live in a building that uses our software, uses our hardware, and they might, just be using like a mobile application. They have some management capabilities, but not a huge amount. And then right down to this kind of what we call key holders or end users who essentially just need to know how to get hold of a key and get in to a building or get into their hotel or whatever. But wait a minute, missing something here, right? Developers, yeah. So we had also kind of a bunch of sort of API documentation that was pretty hidden. And And, developers also need good documentation. And so this is where we sort of pivoted a little bit, and instead of building one website, we built two. The reasons behind this are multiple. Obviously, there's the personas in the sense that, we have, as I showed on the previous slides, people who are actually using the software, using the user interfaces of the software. But then we also have developers who, need to know how the APIs work behind that. And we also focus, as you saw from that first kind of idea of like bringing all the documentation into sort of one place. The idea behind that was like a product-focused decision. From hearing from our tech support teams that people didn't really know sort of even what product they were using. There were a lot of kind of tech reasons behind the split between, a kind of more support type portal and developer portal, and more on that later. Initially we had a lot of debate about, domains, which, I think people use docs or docs.whatever.com, help.whatever.com, support. We saw that there were a lot of people for sort of, these kind of UI type docs, user-facing documentation used to support. And we went with that. Was it the best decision? Well, in hindsight, I think it's work that people know that they will need to get sort of help and support in one particular place. And one of the kind of key points here as far as information architecture goes was that, we were looking at optimizing the user journey. What's the kind of best flow? How are people coming into the site? How do people get to the answers as quickly as possible? We adopted this kind of very flat hierarchies. We don't want people, as fewer clicks as possible to come in and get exactly what you want. This site, again, the reason for removing the kind of complexity of API docs into a different place was because, we didn't think that these personas or our users would be consulting API documentation as well. So, the developer site obviously has a lot of different kind of requirements. For a start, we're sort of auto-generating documentation straight from API specifications. But there's a little bit of crossover with the support side as well. Where we can, we reference things like, systems overviews, best practices, etc. Because, it's not just about like the APIs for developers. They need to know how the software works as well. As well as our two portals, we also complement a lot of this content with webinars, with training from our tech support teams, LMS courses, etc., as well. Moving on to tooling. This is like a great meme. I don't know if anybody, this is my favorite channel in the Write the Docs Slack. Docs as code was kind of, we didn't want to like compromise on that at all because we knew there were a lot of advantages. But I guess the issue that we had with Docs as code is that we had a lot of contributors who weren't familiar with Git. They'd been using traditional tools like CMSs, Word, Confluence, creating PDFs, etc. as well. So there was a real kind of like mind shift change that we had to make in the company, saying, and particularly with kind of upper management, Docs as code, what the heck is that, So we had to kind of sell this around the company. Big change from, moving from sort of, CMSs to working with Git, particularly Git on the command line. Tech choices, I mean, we could have gone with anything. One of the reasons for using Hugo is because our backend team works with Go, programming language. It's super fast as well. And we're able to do a lot of kind of modular things. So for example, we can kind of separate the theme for the website, so we can take the theme out of the picture and then apply it to the different sites. So, even we could have multiple sites that are using the same theme. We can also separate out things like terminology, and I gave a talk about this a couple of years ago, right at the Docs Atlantic. And yeah, the terminology project is itself a Hugo project, a Hugo module, and it's one of the backbones of the whole project as well. But yeah, it's really useful to be able to kind of take different dependencies and then apply them where needed. It was a useful approach. As I say, we could have picked any static site generator. Pick the one that suits your team best. There's been a lot of talk in this community already about migrating, and again, it would probably, be a talk in itself. And of course, migration as well. I guess AI tooling recently has kind of probably improved the pain of migration in general. When we started off this project, there was very little kind of AI tooling. And we were using things like, converting Google Docs to Markdown using the VS Code extension, which you probably used, a lot of you, which is great. And then Google Docs, of course, started supporting Markdown natively, which was also great. And recently, we've been using things like there's a Microsoft tool called Markdown, which is kind of a Python utility that converts files to Markdown. There's a whole bunch of tools out there, that you can, if you want to get your documentation into Markdown, yeah. I mean, you might want to use Markdown, but that's another story. And one of the other things that we did with this project was, we went paperless. We used to kind of hand out like a paper document with all our hardware that sort of was like kind of little IKEA type document, how to install, and environmental reasons, also cost reasons as well. We decided to kind of go paperless with those guides, and so we sort of set up a system within the website where we could essentially take these installation guides, version them with a hashing, and that was kind of a great project for sort of experimenting with LLMs, because I eventually built a kind of small application that along with the help of Claude and Gemini and all their buddies, that sort of allowed me to do that bulk sort of version and upload sort of files as well. So yeah, LLMs are useful for something. And as far as our developer documentation goes, as I said before, automated generation of documentation from Protos, we've been creating a lot of tooling that allows us to generate open API specs as well from the protobuf. We use gRPC in the back end, which is great. But we still had API documentation that was using kind of Swagger or Open API format, and eventually, we want to try and like unify all that into one place. At the moment, we're able to like produce API documentation at least in one place now, which is a start. But the idea is to go eventually to protobuf as our main source of truth. And again, with the developer portal, we can apply the same sort of Hugo tooling building as well. And so then it was time to kind of bring in the experts, and we brought in product managers, support teams. Each of them had like fantastic knowledge in their fields, but of course they require training on how we're working. At one point, I was pulling my hair out. As you can see, I don't have very much hair. And we said, can we just give up this whole docs as code process? Let's just use the CMS. Let's stick a CMS on top of it. People are obviously not getting this. But, eventually, people started to adopt it. We gave gentle nudges to our engineering teams. Engineering teams were great because we're already working in GitHub, of course, or Git or GitLab. It's easy to just kind of like tag folks and say, hey, come and review my docs and can you have a look at this? Support teams who were working on the site, a little bit complex because, they've never used Git before. Product managers, it depends. And you know, there's a learning curve. There's people have different comfort levels with different technical tools. There's a lot of time and investment in training and support. I did spend a lot of time helping people kind of fix broken builds, helping people with Git nightmares. But I think there's like a lot of personal growth opportunities in learning about new things. And this was like some actual real feedback that came from some of the contributors to the documentation. And these are internal contributors within the company. I think fun and agony really kind of describes the job of a technical writer down to a T. And you know, love-hate relationship with Markdown. Sure, I'm not the only one that has that. So yeah, some good feedback. And you know, it can be hard at times. As I said, we you know, I spend a lot of time onboarding people, a lot of time fixing things. But you could have learned to trust the process. And back to Abby Covert, you know, fuzzy is normal. Sometimes things don't exactly fit as you think they might. We're not all technical writers who are contributing to the documentation. We have contributors from all walks of life. And again, sort of fuzzy is sort of fairly normal in the corporate world. You know, things don't always fit neatly. And just when things were starting to fit neatly, just when we thought we were doing good, we got thrown a little bit of a curveball. We go back to baseball. We had a whole rebranding exercise. Yay! So new guidelines, new styling, product name changes, logos, icons, etc., etc. So a lot of consistency challenges across the sites. We did set up for the name changes a whole bunch of kind of redirects, which was useful. And obviously here, linting tools came in very useful, particularly deterministic ones like Veil or Markdown lint. And even now, you know, LLMs are starting to kind of be useful in that sense as well, to be able to you know, help us with our kind of implementing sort of different style changes. Another thing that we took, again, this could be an entire talk in itself, multi-language requirements. So, you know, our product management team said, yeah, we also need the documentation in, you know, all these different languages. We thought about like this for a long time, about whether the developer portal also needed documentation. And here, again, justifying the split, we decided to keep the developer portal in English. Sorry, people who don't speak English, but yeah, that's just the way it is. Whereas our sort of support portal now is in different languages. We have an integration with Crowdin, which is great. You know, automating that kind of boring stuff. It works very well. It, you know, essentially just pushes and pulls translations all the time back and forth to the site. And one of the, you know, we got really lucky here with the actual translators in our teams are, you know, work for the company. So they have this kind of technical expertise. So yeah, we got lucky there. They work as, you know, a kind of like secondary, if you like, proofreading step. So we built it. This isn't actually the pitch from the film, but yeah, this is you know, how we started then convincing people, you know, to come and contribute, and this is what the site looks now. Pulling all the different platform documentation into one place. We even added a YouTube channel with the help of our marketing teams, and the developer portal looks similar. And this is kind of the traffic coming to the site. You know, AI summaries may well kill all the traffic to the site, but there is still traffic coming to the site, still growing. And that little spike there that you see is a mention that we had in a blog post from the marketing teams. And, you know, I just want to say to everybody, you know, big up your doc sites. It's people came. This is a real shot from the end of the Kevin Costner film. People coming to his baseball pitch that he. So happy Hollywood ending, right? Something more, and I know I'm running out of time here. You know, we had to put some search on the site as well. I haven't talked very much about search. Making the site discoverable was really important, obviously. And in the end, we wanted to like be really, and this was something that I stuck in the style guide. It's like, make sure you write kind of good metadata, because it's not just for, you're writing for humans, of course, we're all now writing for LLMs as well. We were already kind of doing this for SEO, right? Back in the day. And now it's LLMs. But our tooling, essentially, we use Vertex AI, which is a Google Cloud tool. And yeah, it features some AI features at the moment. We probably want to get a kind of more chatty type interface, but there's a lot of scope for improvement there. People don't always find what they're looking for on the site, but we're getting there. I would also like to know where to go in Menorca. I've never been. Sounds like a nice place. We also built some tooling to analyze the results better as well. We could do with a data analyst. Sometimes the information that people are looking for, and don't find on the site is just as important or just as useful as, what they do find. There's a great example here. This is sort of, people searching for things that they couldn't find. And we saw that people were looking for API documentation on the support portal, which is like, oh, wait a minute, why did we build 2 sites again? We just had to make sure that there was references to those API docs from the support portal too, and provide, better interlinking. Some lessons learned, early stakeholder engagement is really crucial. Getting buy-in to do the thing. Technical choices in hindsight, there's always going to be payoffs, with whatever technical processes you use. Again, it still kind of plays with me a little bit, the whole CMS thing. We may end up putting a CMS on top, but as I say, fun and agony is good enough for me. That's kind of all I wanted to talk about today. Thanks very much, everybody. Apologies for running over a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A. I've been looking through the Slido questions. I forgot to do a little ad for Slido at the beginning of this. Apologies, but we do have some good Slido questions. To kind of bring them together, there is a lot of talk about the Docs as code adoption and the various types of people who are suddenly finding themselves doing new workflows and like that. What sort of tips do you have for getting people on board? You had some there on the slide there. Do you want to?
It depends. Okay, so it depends kind of who's working on the documentation. So, for example, obviously development teams who are contributing to docs, they're in Git day in, day out. They know what they're doing.
Move the mic with your head.
Oh, is that better? Sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. So use development teams great. People who are not used to Git, there's we have done training sessions in the company. I know that some people get it more than others, but in the end, within 2 to 3 months, I would say is the kind of to put like a time on it. Is generally the sort of time that I've seen from people from knowing nothing about Git at all to being able to adopt it and making the pull requests and creating branches and whatever. It depends. I know it's difficult to maybe say, I've said to trust the process. Perhaps you feel like, you're forcing people to do something that they maybe don't want to do. And of course, that's difficult. That's the mindset. But I think there's also on the flip side of that, there's a lot of kind of personal opportunities to sort of, to grow as well.
Cool. There are a ton of questions. We are technically out of time, but I just want to ask one more question, which I think is always a good one. What would you have done differently if you were to go through this process again?
That's a really, really good question, and one that I'm going to struggle to answer. But probably, I would have like identified who was contributing the site earlier, because obviously we brought in a lot of experts in the field and people that knew a lot about what they were documenting. But I would have brought them into the process, I think, on deciding on tech stack, etc. To be honest, with the kind of post-acquisition, I didn't know a lot of them. And I got, the great thing about this project, I got to know a lot of people in the company as well. Yeah, I would have brought people in a lot earlier, not just kind of stakeholders in the sense that, you know, but people who I knew were actually going to be contributing. And that would have probably helped shape as well the kind of tech stack, I think, at the end of the day too. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, apologies for the abbreviated Q&A, but I want to get us back on schedule. And it was really good talk. Thank you so much for doing it.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Abby.
Thanks.